Perfect.
It's episode 49 of the Fintech Moshpit, and we have Mike Burch, Chief Strategy Officer of Speedway Motorsports. That's right, folks. It's episode 49. We are here with none other than a man who is very, very busy these days. A lot going on. Mike Burch, we cannot thank you enough. Your duties as Chief Strategy Officer of Speedway Motorsports, for many reasons that we're going to drill into, has to be keeping you busy. But for you to carve out a few minutes for us on the Fintech Mosh Pit to have a chat means an awful lot. First of all, welcome to the show and thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here, Tark. Good to talk to you.
You as well. So we have interacted on a number of different fronts in the past, and we're actually going to talk through a couple of them one at a time. But first and foremost, a way we like to start on these Friday episodes with the special guests that we have is really about the COVID impacts, the quarantine time, the economic impacts that are occurring all around us. And in a city like Charlotte, a top 20 size city, a city where hospitality and tourism, where professional sports matter so much, we're feeling the pain. A lot of people are feeling the pain. And I know yourself, the Speedway, Marcus Smith, that entire crew cares so much about this community. Just give us a quick blurb on what you're seeing out there and how the Speedway's leaning in and NASCAR is leaning in to really make a difference during this tough time.
Yeah, I say it really started right out of the gate with our partners at Atrium Health reached out to us and said, hey, we need a place to do some testing in the northern part of Charlotte. So we had ZMAX Dragway. So for several weeks, ZMAX Dragway was a testing site. And as we kind of expanded the capability there, that got shut down. Then we transitioned to blood drives as blood became more of a necessity. And now that we're in the graduation season, we're opening up facilities across the country. Here in Charlotte, we're doing Cabarrus County schools. Our speedways in Texas are doing graduations there. And then obviously, most visibly and most importantly, we're going to host the Coca-Cola 600 on Memorial Day. And hopefully give some people some normalcy about sitting down in front of their television on Sunday afternoon, Memorial Day, and watching some NASCAR.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people are really going to look forward to that. That's obviously going to be one of our big topics that we're going to discuss with you right here. But before we move on from this one, I don't want to jump over the importance of you guys leaning in during what is an incredible tough time for graduating high school seniors. I mean, they've lost so many rites of passage, from proms to rooting on their high school against their nemesis and things like that. But graduation, I mean, I spend a lot of time around many of them, and it's just brutal. What made you guys pick that topic to drill into?
Really, again, graduation times are special memories for all of us. So we thought, how can we use our facility to create something special for these folks, and how can we do it safely? And so being in cars, being isolated, we've got the space, we've got the Speedway TV to provide some visuals for the people who aren't directly participating. And when schools reached out to us, some creative administrators really came to us and said, hey, is there something we could do to make this special, rather than having it driving through the campus or everybody gathering on the football field or whatever? And we thought, hey, what a great opportunity. So we're excited that we've been able to kind of use our facilities to, again, give these folks something memorable, especially a lot of kids who are in NASCAR. We've seen a lot of social media and a lot of people saying, hey, this is awesome. I never imagined I'd be getting my high school diploma at the start finish line at Charlotte Motor Speedway.
Yeah, I think a lot of them never imagined anything they're going through right now, but that's clearly a bit of a silver lining. And as I've gotten through our friendship with Marcus and others, to understand a little more about NASCAR, wasn't a traditional sport that I grew up really watching a lot of. What jumps out at me, I think you just kind of alluded to it, is the family nature to it, whether it's the families that built it and are involved in it, or just the overall view of it's a family together, all boats rise. So it is not surprising to me or anyone that that's what's going on there. And in fact, let's move on to topic number 2. And I'm going to flip these topics around because I just have the urge in the progression order of where we are, not to jump to the end of this story, which I hopefully we're getting close to in the return of physical sports and professional sports, but maybe back to where we are now. You have always been a champion of esports, and that's how we first met. You're the point person for that great organization, Speedway Motorsports, for esports. We've had working sessions, conversations over the last 6 months in plenty. And I just want your take on the state of esports, but particularly one in general, which I think if people didn't know it existed, vast numbers of them now do in the time of COVID, turning on their TV with no sports to watch. And all of a sudden you see esports. But one of them they might not have realized was an esport is iRacing and what's going on with the NASCAR stuff, because it's just so realistic. Give us your take and view on esports in general and what this time of COVID has been like and what it might ultimately do in the end.
Well, I've been really a video gamer my whole life, and really learned the sport of NASCAR through playing video games. And that's where I learned the cars and the sponsors, the manufacturers, even the drivers, going back to the NASCAR racing games. So I saw that, hey, this can be an educational tool as well as a lot of fun. And so a guy named Dave Kemmerer, who used to do all the kind of was the godfather of sim racing. He was the lead programmer on a lot of those early NASCAR games, and John Henry, who owns the Boston Red Sox, hired him to create a racing simulation. I think that's a big difference that we need to kind of sit on for a second. Is there's a big difference between a simulation of a sport and a video game. So I think one of the things that has appealed to people with iRacing is that the inputs are exactly the same as the real sport. So Denny Hamlin sitting down at the wheel, foot on brake, foot on gas, looking at a virtual cockpit. That's the exact same feeling and mechanism that he has when he's
So
actually
why do
out there
so
in
many
the
of
real
them
world.
suck at it? How come so many of them suck?
Because
They're
it
great
is
on
a
the track.
simulation, and yeah, it's that a lot of them will point to that kind of the feel in the butt. You don't feel the G forces, and a lot of the feedback that they get you can't exactly replicate. But it's a much different deal having Denny Hamlin steering versus Kevin Durant pushing the A button in 2K, or having Patrick Mahomes move the joystick to run around. That has nothing to do, no translation to his ability on the field, and vice versa. So I think that's one thing that was drawn to it. And then the amount of work, iRacing as usual is kind of the 15-year overnight success, where they have been modeling these tracks. They have come out and laser scan down to the millimeter and recreating these venues. They have done the same thing with these cars. They have their own atmospherics model. So humidity and daylight and all these things actually impact the car like they do in real life. The tire wear actually is the same. And when they did our Legends cars, they came out and scanned parts of the Legends car and then built the car virtually in the game. And that was a big piece for us, as we wanted to have Legends represented. So I think seeing that level of detail, and then having it be the actual drivers doing using their actual skills, and then all credit to Fox and creating the environment of having Mike Joy and Jeff Gordon. It sounded like a real race. Bringing in the military, doing virtual flyovers using their simulators, and having stars singing from their homes, and having people giving virtual invitations, that when you turned it on, you saw, the real, it felt like you were watching a regular NASCAR race. And some casual observers, were surprised, like, oh, I didn't know NASCAR was back. And no, that's how realistic it looks. It was fooling some people, but you still have so many things. You don't have the quick reset, obviously. When you wrinkle up some sheet metal in the real world, you don't just go sit on pit road for 10 minutes and your car's miraculously fixed.
We've also
So,
seen some drivers get so mad they just leave, right?
yes, the rage quit, which is gamers. We have all come up against that opponent that has just driven us crazy. You had Denny Hamlin's little girl turning off his video screen in the middle of a race. So you've got connectivity issues, and it's not exact reproduction, but I think people really, again, the presentation, and I think we underestimate how good Fox and the other broadcasters are at telling stories. And a lot of esports come at it from a point of view of the participant. And frankly, that's not a really compelling point of view for a long period of time. Yes, it's kind of cool to look inside the car, or kind of look down the barrel at Call of Duty or Overwatch, but you also want to pull back and have that broader strategic view so you can see what's going on the play field. And I think kind of once esports really kind of figures out, it's what I call its poker cam. Like, poker didn't really become a big deal until you could see the whole cards. So esports really hasn't quite yet built the production external camera views and capabilities like they have, because it's all been focused on player point of view. And even in iRacing, people said, well, why is there no pit crew running out when we're watching? Well, if you're sitting in the car, you actually do see the pit crew, but externally, they didn't want to tie up the CPU cycles to depict that for something that really wasn't material to the racing. So I think you look at, why did iRacing resonate? Quality of presentation, a realistic skill depiction, and then having the actual personalities participating in the event were all things that really drove it. And I think it ended up being 6 of the 7 highest rated esports broadcasts on television were iRacing events, averaged over 1 million people for the 7 weeks, which is pretty interesting. And there are plans to continue this, and this has become an off-season opportunity for people who are jonesing for their racing fix to tune into this on a weeknight or a weekend and watch the same type of thing during the off-season.
So I think the final point there, and this is just so intriguing, and I hopefully people are paying more attention to this, because there's so much to it. But I guess my final question on this topic to you is, do you think that, given the 15-year overnight success to where we are now, that this time period is going to have forever changed NASCAR by incorporating more iRacing, legitimized capabilities or touch points into the fan experience that is understandable? And maybe a 400 level course question for you, because I know you're in this space deeply. Is it a matter now that the viewership of esports and iRacing and things like that is high and getting higher, but it hasn't the fan hasn't been monetized like physical sports have, because maybe it wasn't understood or taken seriously, and the economics of it, right? I think you or somebody was telling me that, there are rights that come along with royalty rights that come along with each of the racing stadiums and things like that you see inside those areas. So everyone has pieces of it, but how do you view this story ending as it relates to the next chapter?
Again, I think that I think the broadcast capabilities will catch up to the gaming capabilities. So I think eventually that will become something that sponsors can engage in. I think microtransactions, as we're starting to see, the virtual tips and streamers making a lot of money. Right now, it's very much the hard part, from an external point of view, is largely the producers of the games, the publishers of the games, kind of control the games. The NBA doesn't control the publishing rights for basketball. So basketball, you and I can go out and play without the NBA's approval. We can't go out and play Overwatch, or we can't go out and play some of these other games without the approval of the publisher. We can't go play Fortnite without Epic Games getting a piece of that. So that's a whole different dynamic that you don't have really in the real world of sports. But sports has had 100 years of monetization and figuring out what economics model work. And we're at maybe the end of the first stage break in a NASCAR race when it comes to esports. And participation, obviously, it spans from single digit ages up to we had We had people like Bobby Labonte racing, in iRacing, in his 50s. So
Well, that's what I was going to
gaming has
ask.
become more mainstream. People are growing up with it. People are used to it. And it's become the virtual. I think the virtual theme park is really more a way to think about it. That's really what Fortnite has become. And they just opened up Party Royale, which is much more of a virtual hangout
They're
space than
watching
a
concerts. I mean, inside
blood
there.
guts 101. Yeah, exactly. You've got the Marshmallow, do the first one. Then we just had one a couple weeks ago, and that idea of the metaverse from Ready Player One. This is where we will go, and you may go NASCAR racing inside of Fortnite. There may be NASCAR Island or Charlotte Motor Speedway Island where you'll go and race with your buddies, or you may find guys racing on that, and eventually all these different pieces will get connected together, and there'll still be a kind of a high-end simulator for iRacing, but maybe NASCAR Heat, which is kind of the Xbox PlayStation version, is more what you would play, in the Fortnite universe. I think that's what everybody's fighting for right now. Who's going to be the keeper of the metaverse? Is it Epic Games? Is it Facebook? Is it Google? Is it Apple? Is it Amazon? And fascinating space to watch going forward.
Oh man. Last question on this. Will we see like some of the old retired legends, the King, folks like that, come out of retirement in esports and settle some bets taking on today's top racers?
Well, the King might be a little bit of a stretch, but we've seen that the Dale Juniors. I said Bobby Labonte, and guys who maybe don't want to get into the car in the real world. I could definitely see becoming extending their careers in esports. But then you think about, could you pay for a virtual Chad Canals, a crew chief, to set up your car and help you? Could we pay to have a virtual Mike Joy or virtual Jeff Gordon doing our play-by-play, and kind of this using artificial intelligence and machine language to even broadcast or give us information of the style? Will we eventually get all 35 camera angles that Fox has, and we will have a virtual director that we will be broadcasting in the style of Fox, which is more crowd shots and fan shots, versus CBS versus ESPN, and you'll be able to set all those things up yourself, and really let your computer kind of push back to virtual or other alternate soundtracks. Could you have a Roy Williams or Mike Krzyzewski, after they retire, do a once a week watch the game with them, and you're listening to their point of view as you're watching the game on TV. So all kinds of really fascinating stuff that is going to be enabled because of technology. And this coronavirus has kind of accelerated all of that connectivity and that distance learning, as we've all had to upgrade our Wi-Fi and learn how to do these Zoom calls and things that, used to be you'd get in a Zoom call and nobody would have their video on because nobody was comfortable. Now we all have kind of got used to seeing ourselves on the screen. So all these things I think are just gonna accelerate and become more mainstream. So again, people like me in our 50s, it'll become a normal thing, and the generations that come after us, they're living in this digital world.
Only you and I, as the two people on this week's show, would spend the vast majority of this episode, where the Coca-Cola 600 is returning, talking about esports. So fantastic, great. So let's transition quickly and spend 1/10 of the time we did on esports on what it has the mainstream buzzing, right? Which is NASCAR's crown jewel, the Coca-Cola 600 at Charlotte Motor Speedway. It is coming back. It's been a traditional Memorial Day weekend celebration for 59 consecutive seasons. This makes 60th consecutive season, but it marks something far more important and relevant, which is the most notable return of professional sports, physical sports, right? To our viewership, to our world. So spend no comparable amount of time that we did on esports, but I think a lot of people are really interested. What is the chief strategy officer's view of preparing for this? And it's not just like, I'm sure under normal circumstances, it's nuts, but it being, I mean, every eye in the country, if not the world, is going to be paying attention to this, probably like the Super Bowl. And there's not going to be fans, right? I mean, it's going to be a totally different experience. How does technology play into all this? And what are you thinking? And what is it like over there right now?
Well, as chief strategy officer, my chief strategy is find people smarter than me. So that's really been the key to this: is go out and find the best people you can to help you understand how to keep people safe. What are the best protocols? And that's really going to be the focus here early on, is how do we get the competition right? How do we make sure the participants are safe? And NASCAR has a huge advantage because basically everybody's in full PPE already. So it's not two guys sweating on each other, leaning on each other. Everybody's in fire suits. They've got gloves. They've got helmets. They're very, very protected. They're not really physically competing, body to body, sweat to sweat, breath to breath. They're protected by the vehicles. So NASCAR, by its structure, is really well suited to come back in this environment. Now, our challenge, I take great comfort in the Roman Coliseum, because we have been gathering for thousands of years as people to come together collectively to watch events. So we've got this event. So now our next step is, what does the new fan experience look like? And again, go out there and find smart people. Let's all talk through it. Those of us who own arenas and own racetracks and own stadiums. We have an advantage of being outdoor, which understandably is one of the things that the virus doesn't like is sunlight and people outdoors. So we have a little bit of advantage there. But you still have to think through, what's the ingress and egress? How do we keep people safely distanced as we go into gates? How do we get them to their seats safely? Seating them safely is pretty simple. You checkerboard it out. You keep you sell the seats 6 feet apart. Not a huge issue. But what about when you have to go to the bathroom? What does that look like? What about how do you get your food? A NASCAR race is not a 2-hour NBA game. It's an all-day affair. So those are the things where you sit down with people at Compass Group and Levy Restaurants, our concession partner, and talk with them. You go and you talk with the people, at Atrium, and we've got a network of healthcare providers at all of our speedways across the country. You talk to them. You talk to other sports. We're talking here in Charlotte. We're talking with the Panthers. We're looking at, how do we all learn best practices and kind of create the standard for going back. We're looking at restaurants. What are restaurants doing? Because they're going to be a leader. How are the theaters going to react? How are the theme parks going to react? What's Carowinds going to be doing? What's their experience going to be like? What's it like going to the mall? What's it like going to Target or Walmart? All those things we're building this mental model. So how do we take that so that building trust and having people feel safe is the number one thing people look for going to an event? Is it safe? And then is it clean? And then is it comfortable? So here, safety and cleanliness are tied together in a way that we've never had before. So that's really going to be the key. And then looking at people like yourself, as far as the government, political officials, what's the overall environment in each of these marketplaces? When is it safe to go back? And that, as we're seeing, it's a patchwork right now, state by state. And then what's going on the medical side? Where are we with vaccines and treatment protocols? But I don't see anybody rushing back until you can restore that feeling of safety with the fan base. But in the meantime, we're gonna put on great races that people will be able to consume on TV. You've got our app being free for the first two. You can actually be able to go on your phone and listen in just like you would at the racetrack. Be able to follow the sport electronically as well as through your television. So technology is helping to bridge that gap of people not being there.
Let me ask a final question. It's a chief strategy officer question, right? This is perfect, right up your alley. This is one I would assume the chief strategy officer would have to kind of think through and figure out, right? And I'm drawing kind of reference to a comment you made earlier, how unique NASCAR is from an esports perspective, where it's a simulation more than a game. And I think that's that will stick with me. And I didn't really even think of it like that, but it makes total sense. So it's unique amongst all other esports. And then there's something that just hit me that NASCAR is also unique among all other physical sports in that, and I may be out of school, there might be an argument against this here, but that the physical audience is the least relevant to the outcome and to the actual athletes themselves than any other, right? Because they're not, I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but they're not hearing them directly. They're not seeing them. So I think it's probably least impacted there. I guess, so here's the chief strategy question, right? Which is, in this new world going forward, is NASCAR the most relevant sport where you could get away from physical audiences and focus on the digital fan experience and have the least negative impact of anything else versus watching a basketball game or football game with no one in the audience? I mean, it seems to me like it would be less weird and therefore something that could be embraced no matter what the future holds.
Yeah, I think at one level, you're right on the impact on the participant because yeah, you are really isolated. You just basically have your spotter, your crew chief, and you're not getting as much energy from the fans as you know as Christian McCaffrey is, when the fans are going crazy at a Panthers game. But I will tell you, nobody will be having as much fun Sunday watching the race on TV as they would if they were at the race. So from a fandom, you still going there is still the best experience. We kind of substitute things for if we can't go there, then it's TV. If we can't get on TV, then it's on our tablet. We can't get on our tablet, it's a computer, it's a phone. We take the highest fidelity we can have access to, and being there is still the best experience that you're going to have. And then how do we use technology to amplify and improve that experience? How do we let people know what's going on? How do we give them information? How do we let them bet? I haven't even touched on that going forward to bet on the events.
Is that in the works?
All those.
Is that imminent? Are we going to see that?
Oh, I mean, yeah, it's already, yeah. In states where it's already passed, yes, you can bet. NASCAR is we partnered with Penn National Gaming. There's a NASCAR Finish Line app where you could actually bet on iRacing. You could have if you lived in New Jersey, you could have been betting on these iRacing races.
All right, so now we've dropped into my two favorite things: one, fintech, and two, low stakes degenerate gambling. I mean, that's literally what drives me. So how is just touch on that for a minute, because
they're the same thing. They're the same thing, really.
But fintech. So how is fintech evolving to enable this experience, the individual digital experience with the in-game wagering and things like that? What are you seeing there, and where's that industry going?
Well, again, that's part of the reason why why do you go to stage races? Well, now you've got multiple opportunities. You don't just have to bet on the winner. You can bet on the winner of each stage. Why are we pushing out, per lap speed? So who's got the fastest lap? Who's leading the individual laps? The betting opportunities are incredible. And then you overlay some pari-mutuel horse racing style betting, where you start betting first, second, and third, and daily doubles and quinellas and trifectas. So there's a lot of opportunities that really suit themselves to NASCAR. And again, it's all enabled, through that connectivity, through that device in your hand. Can you get the information? Can you place the bet? Can you buy food? We're accepting, being touchless. I think people have underestimated the impact of touchless payment and seeing the rise in Apple Pay and Google Pay and adoption of that. How do you decrease the friction there? So how do you order food? How do you order merchandise? How do you check bathroom lines? How do you check congested entrances, congested exits, so you can maintain safe distancing? All those things are all going to be enabled because of technology and connectivity. And then all of this is going back to fintech. It's all about dollars and driving those. So microtransactions, paying for your food, paying for your tickets, paying for your pit passes. Oh, I didn't buy one in advance, but I'm standing down here on pit road, and now I can just press my phone and have an instant pit pass, so that I just paid and upgraded right then and there. I don't have to walk back out to the ticket window or walk back out to the pit pass trailer to buy the pass. I can just buy it right there on my phone, show the security guy, and now I'm on pit road, or now I'm in the garage, or now I've upgraded my seat, or now I'm in this cool club area in the grandstands where I can hang out because of this interactivity, this technology, and having the payments be able to flow through, and reconciling those things and tracking those things. And again, looking at now, can we see where people are spending their money? What concession stands are selling versus other ones. We're not as real time isn't quite as urgent for us, but it's still important. Now, what's the right mix of food? How many hot dogs are we selling versus pizzas versus hamburgers versus beers versus waters versus Coke? How do we maximize that experience? And all that goes into, did I have a good time at the event? And all that rides on largely the very similar set of rails within a venue.
Dan, I got to tell you, I'm just over here like, this is amazing. I like you just basically went through and showed how fintech and technology is overhauling how esports and iRacing is simulation, then how gambling is now going to make racetrack the new horse track of the future. I'm just literally, I got to tell you, if you're a nerd like me out there and you're not into NASCAR now, after this conversation, you're just not going to be into anything. So I got to tell you, I think that you hit on a lot of things, and we might need a follow-up conversation at some point on a number of them, but I know you're busy. I know you've got things to do. So Mike Burch, Chief Strategy Officer of Speedway Motorsports, my friend, I cannot thank you enough for being with us on episode 49.
Great. Glad to be here. Really enjoyed it. See you at the
We'll
track
talk
soon.
to you later. Thanks everybody for joining.
Yeah.